The void between stars swallowed light like a hungry beast, but the silver-purple glow of the Vorthak dreadnought iron talon cut through the darkness like a blade. Commander Vorgul stood motionless on the command platform, his chitinous fingers curling around the railing as he studied the holographic projection before him. Ancient glyphs pulsed in the air, warnings carved in a dead language, repeating the same message for millennia. Gromnock, the ship's chief xenologist, adjusted his cranial implants, the violet lenses over his eyes flickering as he deciphered the transmission. His mandibles twitched in unease. "This beacon is older than our empire," he murmured, the subharmonic resonance of his voice vibrating through the deck. "It speaks of Terra, the human homeworld. It warns of sleepers beneath its crust." Vorgul exhaled through his secondary vents, dismissing the notion with a flick of his armored wrist. "Superstition. The humans are a fractured species, barely clinging to their dying planet. What threat could they possibly pose?" The hologram shimmered, revealing fragmented images, ruins buried beneath mountains, towering monoliths, humming with dormant energy, and something else. Something vast, coiled in the planets, heart like a predator waiting to strike. The transmission ended with a final, shuddering glyph, "Do not disturb." Gromnock's claws tightened around his data slate. "Commander, the energy signatures from these ruins, they match nothing in our archives. The humans may not even know what sleeps beneath them." Vorgul's primary eyes narrowed. The Vorthak Dominion had crushed 100 species beneath its heel. What was one more? "Then we will remind them of their place." He turned to the tactical display, where the human homeworld hung like a blue-green emerald against the void. "Set course for Terra. If there is power there, we will claim it before they awaken it." The Iron Talon's engines flared, their silver-purple cores thrumming with lethal intent. Behind them, the ancient beacon pulsed one last time, then went dark forever. Somewhere on Terra, deep beneath the ruins of a forgotten city, something stirred. The Iron Talon tore through the void, its brutalist hull cutting a jagged silhouette against the stars. Inside, the command deck hummed with the low, metallic growl of Vorthak power systems, their silver-purple energy cores pulsing like the slow heartbeat of a war machine. Commander Vorgul stood motionless before the tactical display, his armored exoskeleton reflecting the cold glow of the holographic projection. Terra loomed ahead, a deceptively peaceful sphere of blue and green, its surface marred only by the faint scars of human civilization. Gromnock's claws tapped restlessly against his data slate, the sound a rhythmic counterpoint to the ship's thrumming engines. The scientist's secondary eyes flickered as he processed the latest scans. The ruins beneath Terra's surface were old, older than the Dominion's oldest conquests, older than the First Vorthak War, codes etched into steel. And yet, the humans had built their cities atop them like children playing on a grave. Vorgul's mandibles twitched in silent disdain. The Dominion had seen this before. Species too blind to recognize the weapons beneath their feet, too weak to wield them. The humans would be no different. "Initial scans complete," Gromnock announced, his voice a dry rasp. "Their orbital defenses are underwhelming." The tactical display flickered, overlaying Terra with a web of human installations, pathetically sparse, their technology crude by Vorthak standards. A few aging satellites, a handful of orbital platforms armed with kinetic projectiles, nothing that could withstand the Iron Talon's plasma lances. Vorgul exhaled through his ventral vents, the sound a low hiss of satisfaction. "Then we begin as planned. Broadcast the surrender demand." The transmission pulsed outward, a thunderous decree in the Dominion's war, tongue its harmonics designed to rattle the bones of lesser species. "People of Terra, you stand in the shadow of the Vorthak Dominion. Lay down your arms, kneel, and you may yet live." A single response, crackling through the void in the human's jagged, inelegant language. Negative. Vorgul's primary eyes darkened, a refusal. So soon, Gromnock's spines bristled. "They cannot be serious. Their defenses are a new signal cut through the comms, not from the planet, from beneath it. Deep within Terra's crust, something woke. The scanners screamed. Energy signatures, impossible, blasphemous energy signatures, erupted across the display, spiking like the heartbeat of a leviathan. The ruins beneath Terra's surface were alive, their structures humming with power that defied Vorthak understanding. The ground moved. Human cities trembled, mountains shuddered, and from the depths of a long-buried complex, something vast and metallic unfolded, its armored plates grinding against millennia of sediment. Gromnock's data. Slate clattered to the deck. Vorgul's grip tightened on the command rail. Because now, at last, they understood the humans hadn't built their cities atop the ruins. They had built them atop a guardian. And it was angry. The ground split. Terra's crust peeled back like the lid of a long sealed tomb, revealing the monstrous silhouette beneath. Armored plating, blackened by eons of burial, groaned as it rose, first in segments, then in vast, interlocking sheets, each one the size of a warship. Dust cascaded from its surface in great plumes, choking the sky. The humans had built their cities atop this thing, lived upon it, farmed its soil, never once realizing what slumbered beneath their feet. Or perhaps they had known, perhaps they had waited. Gromnock's claws scraped against the console as he struggled to process the readings. The energy signatures were wrong, not merely advanced, alien in a way that twisted his understanding of physics. The power core beneath that armor pulsed with a rhythm that matched no known technology, its emissions warping space itself, distorting the Vorthak scanners into gibberish. And then the eyes ignited, twin beams of silver. White light lanced upward from the rising colossus, cutting through the dust, choked air like the gaze of a wrathful god. The beams swept across the sky, lingering for a fraction of a second on the Vorthak fleet. Assessing Vorgul's blood ran cold. That was no machine. That was alive. The humans had not built it. They had inherited it, and now it was awake. On the surface, Colonel Diana Harriman stood atop a crumbling rooftop, her boots grinding against fractured concrete. The city around her was in chaos. Buildings swayed, streets cracked, and the air trembled with the deep resonant hum of something ancient and furious. She had seen the Vorthak ships darken the sky. She had heard their demands, and now she watched as the earth itself answered. A grin split her dust-streaked face. "Told you bastards not to poke the bear," she muttered. The Guardian moved. Its first act was not an attack, not a weapon, a voice, deep as tectonic plates shifting, rolled across the battlefield. Not through comms, not through any frequency the Vorthak could intercept. It resonated in their bones, in the metal of their ships, in the very air they breathed. Unauthorized hostiles detected. The words were not in any language, and yet, every being on the planet understood. Terra is under protection. Gromnock's spines flattened against his skull. Vorgul's claws flexed, his tactical mind racing. The Guardian fired, a beam of silver-purple energy, eerily similar to Vorthak weapon signatures, but refined to impossible perfection, lanced upward. It struck the lead destroyer dead center, shearing through shields, armor, and deck plating in a single catastrophic instant. The ship detonated, its own power core overloading in a bloom of violet fire. Silence followed, not just from the Vorthak, from the humans, because now, at last, they understood too. They had never been alone, and their guardian had teeth. Section Fey, the trigger, the silence that followed the Guardian's strike, was not the quiet of shock. It was the stillness of a predator recalculating its attack. Vorgul's command deck was bathed in the flickering violet glow of emergency lighting, the acrid scent of ozone, and scorched metal thick in the air. His secondary hearts hammered against his ribs, a biological drumbeat of war. His tactical display flickered, reassembling itself after the electromagnetic backlash of the Guardian's weapon. The human's so-called protector had not just destroyed a ship, it had erased it. No debris field, no escape pods, just annihilation. Gromnock's voice crackled over the comm, strained with something Vorgul had never heard from him before. Fear. Commander, that weapon. It's not just energy, it's adaptive. Our shields were tuned to disperse plasma, but it learned. Adjusted mid-strike, that's impossible. Vorgul finished, his voice a low growl, yet the evidence burned in the void before them. Below, the human forces had frozen, their armored vehicles, their scattered infantry, even their command posts had gone eerily still. The Guardian's voice had not just spoken to the Vorthak. It had spoken to them, and now, for the first time since the invasion began, the humans were not looking at their conquerors. They were looking at the earth beneath their feet. Colonel Diana Harriman stood in the ruins of what had once been a communications bunker, her boots sinking slightly into the churned mud. The air smelled of burning metal and ionized rain. Her helmet's HUD flickered, damaged systems struggling to compensate for the energy surge that had rippled across the battlefield moments ago. She had heard the voice they all had. Around her, soldiers, hardened veterans who had fought street by street, who had watched cities burn, were staring at the ground like children hearing thunder for the first time. One of them, a grizzled sergeant, reached down and pressed his palm flat against the dirt, as if expecting it to speak again. Captain Michael Grogan exhaled sharply over the squad channel. "Colonel, you seeing this?" She didn't need to ask what he meant. The Guardian's beam had not just killed a Vorthak destroyer. It had left a scar, a jagged, glowing fissure in the sky where the ship had been, as if reality itself had been cut. And from that wound, silver-purple energy still crackled, tendrils of it licking downward like lightning seeking earth. Harriman's jaw tightened. They had been told, in hushed tones, in classified briefings, that Earth had defenses older than recorded history, that there were things buried beneath the ice, beneath the ocean, beneath the deserts, things that slept, but no one had ever said they would wake up. Vorgul's claws flexed against the armrests of his command throne. This was not a setback, this was data. The humans had a weapon. Fine, all weapons had limits, all defenses could be overwhelmed. He opened a fleet-wide channel, his voice cutting through the stunned silence of his officers. "All vessels, recalibrate shields to rotating harmonic frequencies. If it learns, we make it work for it. Ground forces, press the advance. That thing won't fire if its own kind are in the blast radius." A pause. Then, quieter, to Gromnock, "And find me its power source." Because every weapon needed fuel, and when it ran out, Terra would burn. The Guardian did not speak again, but deep beneath the planet's crust, in chambers older than continents, something stirred. The Vorthak armada adjusted with brutal efficiency, their silver-purple warships shifting formation like a school of predatory fish, sensing blood. Shield harmonics cycled through randomized frequencies, their energy signatures pulsing in discordant waves, meant to confuse the ancient Guardians' targeting systems. Below, the ground forces advanced, their armored boots crushing the ruins of human cities beneath them, their plasma lances carving through the last pockets of resistance. Vorgul watched the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. The Guardian had not fired again. It was learning, or more likely, it was hesitating. Gromnock's claws danced across the holographic interface, his violet eyes narrowed in concentration. "The energy readings from the Guardian are fluctuating," he murmured, his voice a low rasp of static. "It is not infinite, it bleeds." Vorgul's mandibles twitched in something resembling a smile. All weapons had limits, beneath the ice, beneath the ocean, beneath the deserts. Something stirred. Colonel Diana Harriman felt it before she saw it, a vibration. Not through the ground, through her bones. She stood in the ruins of what had once been a command bunker, the walls cracked open like an eggshell, the air thick with the acrid stench of burning metal. Around her, the survivors of the famed demechanized division moved in grim silence, their faces streaked with soot and blood. They had fought, they had lost, but they were not done. Captain Michael Grogan crouched beside a shattered console, his fingers tracing the fractured screen. "Colonel," he said, his voice hoarse. "You need to see this." The display flickered, half dead, but the message was clear. Deep beneath their feet, in chambers older than language, something was awake, and it was angry. The Guardian's voice echoed through the ruins once more, but this time it was different. Not a warning. Recalibrating. The ground trembled. The sky split. For one heartbeat. Two. The battlefield held its breath. Then the earth erupted, not in fire, not in light, a single shattering note, deeper than thunder, older than stars, tore through the Vorthak ranks. Their shields flared, then shattered, the silver-purple energy dissipating like mist before a hurricane. The warships above lurched, their systems screaming as the harmonic resonance ripped through their circuits. Gromnock's claws spasmed around the console. Impossible. Vorgul's eyes burned with fury. The humans had not built this weapon. They had awakened it, and now it sang the song of their defiance. Beneath the ice, beneath the ocean, beneath the deserts, the giants were awake, and they remembered war. The silence that followed the Guardian's awakening was not the absence of sound. It was the absence of certainty. Vorgul stood frozen on the command deck of his flagship, his claws digging into the railing as the resonance of that impossible note still hummed through the bones of his warship. The Vorthak armada, once an unbreakable tide of silver, purple might, now drifted like wounded beasts, their energy signatures flickering erratically. His tactical display was a ruin of shattered projections, shields down, weapon systems locked in emergency reboot. The very air inside his vessel vibrated with the aftershocks of that single, annihilating tone. Gromnock's voice crackled over the comms, stripped of its usual clinical detachment. "High Commander, the harmonic frequency. It's not just disrupting our systems, it's rewriting them." Vorgul's mandibles tightened, rewriting, as if the ancient machine beneath the human ruins had reached into the heart of Vorthak technology and unmade its logic. A cold, unfamiliar sensation coiled in his chest. On the surface, Colonel Diana Harriman exhaled slowly, her breath misting in the sudden, unnatural stillness. The battlefield around her was a graveyard of fallen Vorthak war machines, their once imposing forms now dark and lifeless. The human soldiers, though still standing, stared at the ruins with a mix of awe and dawning comprehension. They had expected to die here. Instead, they had remembered. Captain Michael Grogan staggered to her side, his armor scorched, his rifle hanging limp in his grip. "Colonel, what the hell was that?" Harriman didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the ruins, where the Guardian's voice still whispered in the stones. The answer was there, buried in the echoes of a war fought long before humanity had ever looked to the stars. "Not ours," she murmured at last, "but for us." Above them, the sky was no longer a battlefield. It was a reckoning, the Vorthak armada, pride of an empire that had never known defeat, now hung broken in the void. Their warships, designed to endure the fury of supernovae, had been crippled by a song older than their civilization. And beneath the ice, beneath the ocean, beneath the deserts, the Guardian stirred. Not just here, everywhere. Gromnock's scanners screamed as new signals flared to life across Terra's surface. Ancient structures, long buried beneath the weight of millennia, pulsed with the same impossible energy. The planet was not a graveyard of dead gods. It was an arsenal, and humanity had just been handed the keys. Vorgul's claws flexed. This was not a battle. This was an equation, and for the first time in his life, the variables were unknown. The silence that followed was not the absence of sound, but the weight of revelation pressing down like the depths of a black hole. Vorgul stood motionless on the command deck of his crippled flagship, the Eclipse Razor, its once proud silver, purple hull now scarred with rents that bled violet plasma into the void. His neural interface flickered with damage reports, but his mind was elsewhere, locked onto the impossible truth unfolding before him. Terra was not a backwater, it was a fortress, and humanity had not built it. Gromnock's data streams scrolled across the holographic display, each line of fresh horror. The beacons beneath the ice, the ruins beneath the deserts, the structures humming to life beneath the ocean. They were not human. They were something older, something that had waited, patient as tectonic plates, for a species worthy of wielding them, and somehow, against all logic, humanity had been deemed worthy. Vorgul's mandibles twitched. The Vorthak Dominion had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had shattered empires that spanned star clusters. They had never once hesitated before annihilation. Yet now, for the first time, he felt the cold prickle of doubt. Colonel Diana Harriman watched the alien commander through the flickering holoscreen, her expression unreadable. The transmission was unstable. The same energy that had crippled the Vorthak armada was playing havoc with comms. But she could see the tension in his stance, the way his armored fingers flexed, as if grasping for a weapon that no longer existed. She knew that feeling. She had felt it herself, years ago, standing in the ruins of New Mumbai after the first Vorthak bombardment. The moment when you realize the enemy is not just stronger, but different in ways you cannot predict. And now, the roles were reversed. Behind her, Captain Michael Grogan shifted, his augmented optics tracking the alien fleet's wreckage. "They're not attacking," he muttered. "Why aren't they attacking?" Diana didn't answer. She didn't need to. The Vorthak were calculating, and for the first time in their history, the numbers did not favor them. Gromnock's claws trembled as he adjusted the scanners. The energy signatures were spreading, not just from the Arctic, from every buried structure, every hidden vault, every ruin humanity had dismissed as myth. The planet was waking up, and with it, something far older than either of their species. His neural feed pulsed with warnings, unknown technology, unknown purpose, unknown allegiance. The energy did not burn the humans. It answered to them. A terrible understanding settled over him. The Dominion had come to conquer a young, fractured species. Instead, they had stumbled upon the keepers of a dead civilization's wrath. Vorgul made his decision with a single command pulse. He silenced the alarms, silenced the panicked chatter of his officers, silenced everything but the hum of dying systems. Then, with deliberate slowness, he opened a direct channel to the human commander. The holoscreen stabilized, two predators, standing at the edge of an abyss, neither fully understood, locked eyes across the void. No words were needed. The equation had changed, and for the first time in galactic history, the Vorthak and humanity stood on the same side of the battlefield. Against something worse, the silence that followed was heavier than the void between stars. Vorgul's command deck, once a symphony of tactical chatter and the hum of silver-purple energy conduits, now lay steeped in the quiet of a tomb. His officers stood frozen, their armored forms rigid, their neural feeds flickering with disbelief. The humans, the prey they had come to break, had not just resisted. They had unleashed something, and now the abyss stared back. Beyond the fractured viewscreen, the battlefield had transformed. The human warships, once outnumbered and outgunned, now pulsed with an eerie, golden radiance energy that moved like liquid fire, coiling around their hulls in patterns too precise to be natural. The wreckage of Vorthak destroyers drifted like dead husks, their brutalist frames gutted by weapons that left no scorch marks, only smooth, glassy wounds where metal had simply ceased to exist. Gromnock's talons dug into the command console, his neural interface screaming with corrupted data. His scientific mind, honed over centuries of Dominion supremacy, recoiled at what he was seeing. This was not human technology. It was older, hungrier. The energy signatures matched nothing in the Dominion's vast archives. No known civilization, no extinct empire, not even the whispered legends of the first ones. And yet, The humans wielded it with a familiarity that chilled him. They had known, not all of them perhaps, but someone, some hidden cabal of their species, had kept this secret buried deep. A warning klaxon shrieked, snapping Vorgul back to the present. The tactical display flared crimson as a new presence tore into the system. Something massive. The void itself seemed to ripple, warping like water under the weight of an unseen leviathan. Then, with a shudder that resonated through the bones of every ship in the fleet, it emerged. No. A monument. Black as the space between galaxies, its surface drank in the light, leaving only the faintest impression of jagged, angular architecture, like the ribs of some long-dead god. At its core, a single pulsing wound of gold burned, casting sickly reflections across the ruined battlefield. Gromnock's breath caught. The beacon, the ancient warnings carved into dead worlds, the fragments of prophecy the Dominion had dismissed as superstition, they had all spoken of this. Beware the sleepers. Beware the ones who walk in the dark. And now the sleepers had awakened. On the human flagship, Colonel Diana Harriman watched the monstrosity unfold through the bridge's reinforced viewport. Her hands, steady through 100 battles, trembled. They had gambled, they had won, and now they had doomed them all. Captain Grogan's voice crackled over the comms, stripped of its usual bravado. "Colonel, what the hell did we just wake up?" She had no answer. Only the creeping certainty that this was why the Ancient Ones had left their warnings. Not to protect the galaxy from humanity, but to protect humanity from this. Vorgul's neural feed burned with a single, inescapable truth. The trap had sprung, and there was no way out. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Vorgul's command throne hummed beneath him, its neural interface pulsing with the last fractured data streams from the obliterated Vorthak fleet. The bridge of the Dominion's wrath was a tomb of flickering violet light, the air thick with the acrid tang of overloaded power conduits. His warriors, once proud, once unbreakable, stood frozen at their stations, their armored hands hovering over dead controls. The holographic tactical display flickered, its silver-purple glow casting jagged shadows across their faces. The word echoed in his skull. The human gambit had worked. Their desperate suicidal strike had cracked open the ancient vault beneath Terra's surface. And now something else had spilled out. Something the Vorthak Dominion had dismissed as myth. Something the galaxy had forgotten. Gromnock's claws dug into the console before him, his neural tendrils twitching as he parsed the last sensor sweep. The readings made no sense. The energy signatures were wrong, not just advanced, but alien in a way that defied even the Dominion's most classified archives. The thing that had emerged from Terra's crust was not a ship, not a weapon, but something alive, something that moved like liquid shadow, swallowing entire battle groups in its wake. Beware the sleepers. The ancient warning slithered through his mind. On the human flagship, Colonel Diana Harriman watched the devastation unfold through the reinforced viewport. The thing, the sleeper, had no form, no structure, just a shifting mass of darkness that pulsed with sickening, rhythmic light. It devoured Vorthak warships like a predator swallowing prey, their silver-purple hulls crumpling like paper in its grasp. The few that fired upon it found their plasma lances absorbed, their munitions vanishing into the abyss. And then it turned. Toward them, her stomach lurched. She had thought they were unleashing a weapon, a final desperate strike against the Dominion. But this was no tool, no controlled force. This was hunger. This was vengeance. Captain Grogan's voice crackled over the comms, stripped of its usual bravado. "Colonel orders?" Her fingers tightened around the edge of the command console. They had won, and now they would burn for it. Vorgul's neural feed burned with the truth. The humans had not been the prey. They had been the bait, and the galaxy would pay the price. The command deck of the Indomitable was silent save for the low, rhythmic hum of failing systems. The air smelled of scorched metal and ionized plasma, the aftermath of a battle that had ended not in victory, but in something far worse. Colonel Diana Harriman stood motionless before the flickering tactical display, her reflection warped in the cracked glass. The data feeds were a mess of corrupted signals, but one thing was clear: the sleeper was moving, not toward the remnants of the Vorthak fleet, what little remained of it, but outward, toward the stars, toward everything. Behind her, Captain Grogan exhaled sharply, his fingers hovering over the weapons console. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by the rigid tension of a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was crumbling. "We woke it," he muttered, not a question, but a grim acknowledgement. Harriman didn't answer. Her mind raced through the implications. The ancient beacons hadn't been warnings. They had been wards, seals, and humanity in its desperation had shattered them. A sharp chime cut through the silence. The comms officer stiffened, his voice tight. "Colonel, we're receiving a transmission. It's not Vorthak." The screen flickered, then resolved into a grainy, time-worn image. A human face, or something close to it, stared back at them, its features gaunt, its eyes hollow with an exhaustion that spanned millennia. The language it spoke was archaic, a dialect dead for centuries, but the translation matrix stitched meaning together from the ruins of syntax. "You have broken the chains." The voice was calm, empty, the voice of something that had waited too long. "We tried to warn you. We buried them deep, where none would reach. But you dug, you always dig." A shudder ran through the deck as the sleeper pulsed in the distance, its form swelling like a storm front. The transmission wavered, the ancient speaker's face distorting as static clawed at the edges. "They are coming, and they remember." The screen went dark. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, across the ruined battlefield, the Vorthak fleet, those ships still capable of movement, began to reorient, not to attack, not to flee, to form up. Vorgul's flagship, its hull scored in bleeding coolant, pivoted toward the Indomitable. Its weapon ports remained cold, but its comms array activated, broadcasting on an open channel. A single, untranslated symbol flashed across Harriman's display, a Vorthak sigil. Grogan let out a disbelieving laugh. "You've got to be kidding me." Harriman didn't share his amusement. She understood the Dominion had come to conquer, to burn humanity to ash. But now, faced with annihilation, they were doing the only thing left to them. They were choosing to stand, and so would she. Her hand closed over the comm switch. "All remaining vessels," she said, her voice steady, "form defensive perimeter. Full power to shields." Outside, the void trembled. The sleeper opened its eyes. The void between the fleets became a silent cathedral of anticipation. The Vorthak ships, their brutalist silhouettes scarred and flickering with silver-purple energy leaks, arranged themselves in a staggered formation. Not the aggressive wedge of conquerors, but the disciplined arc of warriors preparing for a last stand. Their weapon ports remained dark, but their engines pulsed with readiness. Harriman watched them through the Indomitable's tactical display, her fingers resting lightly on the armrest of her command chair. The Vorthak sigil for truce still glowed on her screen, untranslated but unmistakable. She had seen it before, in the classified intelligence briefings, an ancient symbol, one the Dominion reserved for only the most dire of circumstances. It was not surrender, it was recognition. They know, she thought. They finally understand. Beyond the two fleets, the sleeper stirred. It was not a ship, not a machine, not even a creature, in any sense that biology or physics could define. It was a presence, a vast and terrible awareness unfolding into reality, like a blade being drawn from a sheath. The void itself seemed to warp around it, space-time groaning under the weight of its attention. Gromnock's voice crackled over the comms, his usual arrogance shattered into raw, desperate urgency. "Human commander, listen to me. That thing is not just a weapon, it is a judgment. It does not distinguish between aggressor and defender. It consumes." Harriman didn't respond. She didn't need to. She had read the same warnings buried in Earth's oldest ruins, in the fragments of dead civilizations that had left their final messages etched in stone and steel. Do not wake the sleeper. It does not forgive. But humanity had run out of choices. Grogan exhaled sharply beside her, his knuckles white around the grip of his rifle. So what now? We just sit here and wait for it to eat us all? Harriman's lips thinned. No. She activated the fleet. Wide channel, all vessels, lock weapons on the sleeper, full barrage on my mark. A beat of stunned silence. Then, Vorgul's flagship pulsed its engines once, a silent acknowledgement. Across the battlefield, the remaining Vorthak ships powered up their weapons, their brutalist turrets swiveling, not toward the humans, but toward the abomination between them. The sleeper shifted, the void screamed. The sound was impossible, a shriek of twisted physics, of space itself, recoiling from the sleeper's awakening. It wasn't a noise transmitted through air, but a vibration in the bones of every ship, a resonance that made metal groan and flesh tremble. Vorgul's command throne shuddered beneath him as his flagship systems flickered. The holographic displays wavered, their silver-purple light distorting, as if something were pulling at reality. His crest of rigid spines flattened against his skull, an instinctive reaction to a predator's presence. The sleeper wasn't just moving, it was unfolding. Across the battlefield, the human fleet held formation, their ships, once dismissed as crude by Vorthak standards, now grimly steady. Harriman's vessel, the Iron Resolve, hovered like a blade unsheathed, its angular armor glinting under the sleeper's sickly radiance. She stood at the viewport, her reflection a ghost against the stars, her expression unreadable. Gromnock's claws scraped against the analysis console, his frilled throat pulsing in distress. It's rewriting local physics, he hissed. Gravity wells are forming where there shouldn't be any. The scans were useless now, their readings devolving into nonsense energy spikes with no source. Mass fluctuations that defied logic. The sleeper wasn't just a weapon, it was an error in the universe. Then the first tendril lashed out. It wasn't matter. It wasn't energy. It was something else. A filament of darkness that unspooled from the sleeper's core faster than light, faster than thought. A Vorthak cruiser, the Harbinger's Wrath, was the first to die. The tendril touched it, and the ship didn't explode. It unraveled, its armored plates peeling back like rotten fruit, its crew reduced to swirling motes of ash before the vacuum swallowed them whole. Vorgul's blood ran cold. This wasn't warfare. This was erasure. Harriman's voice crackled across the comms, sharp and clear. Fire. The human fleet obeyed. Railgun rounds streaked across the void. Hypersonic slugs glowing white, hot from atmospheric friction that shouldn't exist in vacuum. Plasma lances carved searing arcs through the dark, their heat signatures bleeding violet as the sleeper's distortion field warped their trajectories. And then, the missiles, dozens of them, their warheads pulsing with containment fields that even the Vorthak didn't fully understand. The sleeper rippled. For a heartbeat, the darkness convulsed, its form shuddering under the barrage. Then it reacted. Space twisted. A Vorthak destroyer simply ceased to exist. Its silhouette smeared across reality like ink in water. The human frigate Dauntless fired its engines in a desperate evasion. Too late. A fractal web of black veins crawled across its hull, and then the ship was gone, its absence leaving a wound in the battlefield. Grogan's breath was ragged in his helmet. We're not hurting it. Harriman didn't flinch. We don't have to, because the sleeper was turning, not toward the humans, not toward the Vorthak, but inward, toward the source of the ancient signal that had woken it, toward the Vorthak homeworld. Gromnock's voice was a whisper. It's following the beacon, our beacon. Vorgul's mandibles clenched. They had awoken the beast, and now it was coming for them. The battlefield held its breath. The sleeper's movement was not a rush, not a charge. It was a slow, inevitable turning, like a planet shifting its axis. The void around it warped, space itself bending under its presence, as if reality recoiled from its touch. The human and Vorthak ships, locked in their desperate dance of survival, became mere afterthoughts in the wake of its focus. Gromnock's claws trembled against the console. The readings were impossible. The sleeper wasn't just moving, it was unfolding, its structure revealing dimensions that should not exist. The Vorthak scanners, built to dissect the universe into quantifiable data, could only scream errors back at him. His mind, trained in the cold calculus of war, struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. This was not a weapon. This was an extinction event given form. Vorgul's mandibles flexed, his instincts screaming at him to act, to fight. But his tactical mind knew the truth. They had already lost. The sleeper was beyond them, beyond anything they had ever faced. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, hung in the void, like ghosts, their weapons silent. Even they understood. Harriman's voice crackled over the comms, calm and deliberate. All human vessels, fall back to defensive perimeter Sigma, hold fire unless engaged. Grogan's fingers hovered over his weapon. The order made sense. Why waste bullets on a storm? But his blood still burned with the need to do something. The sleeper was moving. Yes, but toward the Vorthak homeworld, toward billions of lives. He glanced at the tactical display. The Vorthak armada, once a razor-edged blade poised to gut humanity, now drifted in disarray. Their formations had shattered. Their commanders were silent. They're afraid. The realization hit him like a round to the chest. The Vorthak, the conquerors who had burned their way across the stars, who had scoffed at human defiance. They were afraid. Gromnock's voice cut through the silence on the Vorthak flagship. High Commander, the sleeper's trajectory is confirmed. It will reach the homeworld in 6 cycles. Vorgul's claws dug into the command throne. 6 cycles, 6 rotations before the end of everything. The beacon had been their arrogance, their triumph, a final insult to the humans, proof that even their last warnings were meaningless. Now, it was their death sentence. Harriman's face appeared on the view screen, her expression unreadable. Vorgul, the Vorthak commander, stiffened. She had never addressed him directly before. "You woke it," she said, her voice quiet, "but we're the only ones who've ever fought it and lived." The words hung between them, heavy as a planet's gravity. Vorgul's spines flattened against his skull. She was right, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. The silence on the Vorthak flagship void spike was absolute. The only sound was the faint hum of the ship's core, a low, pulsing thrum that vibrated through the deck like the heartbeat of some great wounded beast. Vorgul's claws remained embedded in the armrests of his command throne, the metal groaning under the pressure. His secondary eyes, small, black, and unblinking, flickered across the tactical display before him. The sleeper's trajectory burned crimson across the star map, an undeniable line drawn toward the Vorthak homeworld. 6 cycles, 6 rotations before annihilation. Gromnock stood rigid beside him, his data slate clutched in trembling claws. The scientist's normally vibrant violet bioluminescence had dimmed to a sickly gray. His spines pressed flat against his exoskeleton in instinctive submission. He had been the one to decipher the ancient human warnings, the one who had dismissed them as primitive superstition. Now, his voice was hollow. The sleeper moves faster than projected. Our last scans show its mass destabilizing local space-time. It's not just approaching. It's unraveling the void in its path. Vorgul's mandibles twitched. He had seen the archival footage from the last war, the grainy, centuries-old recordings of human fleets engaging the sleeper. The way their ships had burned, their weapons useless, their formations shattered like brittle glass. The Vorthak Empire had laughed at those images, secure in their superiority. Now, the laughter was ash in his throat. On the view screen, Harriman's face remained still, her dark eyes unreadable. The humans had always been an enigma, violent yet disciplined, reckless yet calculating. They had fought the sleeper before, And somehow, impossibly, they had survived. Vorgul's mind raced. The Vorthak Armada was the most advanced force in the galaxy, their weapons honed through millennia of conquest. Yet the sleeper had ignored their attacks as if they were nothing, its monstrous form shrugging off plasma lances and singularity warheads alike. And then there were the humans. Their ships were smaller, their technology cruder by Vorthak standards. But they had done what no other species had. They had hurt the sleeper. Their weapons had left scars on its hide, their tactics forcing it into retreat. Harriman's voice cut through his thoughts, calm and measured. "You have one chance." Vorgul's spines bristled. Chance? The word was foreign to him. The Vorthak did not rely on chances. They crushed resistance beneath their might. But now, for the first time in his life, he felt the cold grip of desperation. "Speak," he growled. Harriman's gaze never wavered. "You don't fight it, Head. You don't outgun it. You outthink it." A flicker of movement behind her. Grogan, the human soldier, stepping into frame. His armor was battered, his face lined with old scars, but his eyes burned with something Vorgul had never seen in his own warriors. The weight of it settled over the bridge like a collapsing star. The Vorthak had spent centuries believing themselves the apex of war. But humanity? Humanity had spent theirs surviving, and that made all the difference.